Pop the trunk. The night was dark, and the forest was eerily quiet, save for the low rumble of a car approaching on a dirt path. The vehicle came to a stop, its dimming headlights cutting through the shadowy underbrush. The engine went silent, and two men exited the car. Paul, in his 30s, was wiry and restless. Graeme, a gruff man in his 50s, moved with the confidence of someone who had seen too much and cared too little. They left the car doors ajar, casting an artificial glow across the forest floor. Without speaking, they made their way to the trunk. Graeme pressed a button, and with a metallic click, the lid sprang open. A pale arm flopped out, lifeless, swinging gently in the cold night air. Paul stared down at the body, a curious tilt to his head.
"Who is it?"
he asked. Graeme shot him a sharp glare.
"We're paid not to ask questions."
Paul shrugged, but his eyes lingered on the figure.
"Just wondered?"
"Well, don't.
Graeme snapped.
It makes no odds anyway."
With a grunt, Graeme grabbed the corpse by its shoulders and yanked it out of the trunk. The body tumbled to the ground with a dull thud. It was small, draped in a dirty white hood, stained with blood. A dark hole pierced the fabric where the forehead should have been. Paul leaned closer, frowning.
"Ain't very big."
"Good."
Graeme grunted, pulling a shovel from the trunk and thrusting it into Paul's chest.
"Shouldn't take you long to bury it then, should it?"
Paul scowled but took the shovel. His gaze dropped to the body, catching on the small ornamental cross hanging around its neck. Kneeling down, he fingered the chain.
"What's with the hood?"
he asked.
"Don't know. Don't care."
Graeme replied. Paul tugged on the cross.
"Well, they won't be needing this where they're going."
"Leave it."
Graeme barked, his tone sharp. Paul looked up, his eyes narrowing.
"For fuck's sake, who's gonna know?"
"I will."
Graeme hissed. Paul scoffed but tucked the cross under the corpse's shirt. Standing, he gestured to the body.
"Ain't had one with a hood before. Kinda creepy."
"Grab a leg."
Graeme ordered, ignoring the comment. Together, they dragged the body across the rough ground. The corpse bumped and jolted, its hooded head lolling grotesquely. They stopped in front of the car, where Graeme pointed to a spot illuminated by the headlights.
"This'll do. Now dig."
Paul sighed but started to dig. Time passed as the grave deepened, sweat glistening on Paul's brow under the pale moonlight.
"That'll do,"
Paul said, leaning on the shovel, breathless.
"No, it won't.
Graeme barked, draining a flask of whiskey.
Keep digging."
Muttering curses under his breath, Paul raised the shovel again. But as he turned back to the body, he froze. The corpse was no longer where they'd left it.
"Holy fucking shit. I thought it was dead."
Paul exclaimed, stumbling back. Graeme turned, his hand instinctively going to the gun holstered under his jacket. The body was moving. Slowly, it crawled toward the car, its hooded head twitching unnaturally.
"It's a reflex.
Graeme said, though his voice wavered.
Muscle memory or some shit like that."
Paul prodded the body with his foot, and it froze, its head snapping side to side as if listening. Then, it resumed its crawl. Before Paul could react, Graeme fired 3 shots. The body jerked violently as the bullet struck, then lay still.
"Well, I'll be damned. Ain't never seen shit like that before."
Paul muttered, his voice tinged with disbelief. Graeme holstered his gun and bent down to drag the body to the grave.
"Let's get this thing buried. It's starting to give me the creeps."
"I thought you wanted it deeper."
They dumped the body unceremoniously into the shallow hole. Paul retrieved a sack of lime from the trunk and poured it over the corpse. The two men worked in tense silence, their nerves frayed. But as Paul moved to fill the grave, the body sat bolt upright. Both men yelped in terror. Graeme fumbled for his gun while Paul swung the shovel, smashing it down on the corpse's head with a sickening crack. Blood sprayed across Graeme's face as he emptied his gun into the body. For a moment, all was still. Breathing hard, Paul buried the body, packing the dirt down with the shovel. Neither man spoke as they finished the job and returned to the car. Paul climbed into the passenger seat, digging into his pocket. With a sly grin, he pulled out the cross he had stolen earlier, holding it up triumphantly. Graeme's expression darkened.
Oh, Jesus.
He muttered. From the back seat, a voice rasped, low and guttural. Both men turned. The hooded figure was sitting there leaning into the light. It turned its head to look at them, its movement slow and deliberate. It smiled, revealing jagged teeth, and clicked its neck with an audible crack. Paul and Graeme's expressions twisted in horror.
Bloody Mary's Horror Stories. Watch